What up, what up, what up? It's your man Sean P coming in live. This is the Sean P experience, man. I am so, as you can tell my voice, I'm over the top excited about today's guest, man. I am over the hills because I have been bragging about this book for the past year to anybody that would listen. I've read the book like 4 times, maybe in total. Uh, and I'm so excited to get a yes from this author, and I got on the screen right now, man. Markus Redmon, how you doing, my man?
Excellent, man. Thank you for having me. It's a privilege.
Man, just I never take for granted when I get a yes. I'm always like the first time ever, so thankful, so grateful, and I'm just honored to have you on the podcast, man.
I'm very, very excited to be here. Like I said, anytime I get to speak with someone where the book has really resonated with them, it's a wonderful experience, and I'm happy to get into it, man. I can't I can't wait.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So let me do the official introduction, right? I have
Okay.
before me today's guest. Markus Redmon is an actor, director, screenwriter, and now he's an author, right? His work combines his inquisitive interest in history and how it shapes our present, as well as his fascination with the supernatural creatures and what they represent to us in the real world. He is also obsessed with Singaporean television dramas. I got to talk about that later on in the podcast. Originally from Philly, living in Los Angeles with his wife, Isis. My man,
Hmm.
Markus Redmon. Thanks for the show, man.
Yeah, man. All that
Let
stuff's
me,
true. It's all
yeah, yeah,
true.
yeah. Let me start with this. You from Philadelphia, I see, and now you're
Yes.
in Los Angeles. Do you
Hmm.
actually miss the classic Philadelphia cheese steak?
Oh man. Of course. Of course. They don't know how to do it out here. They market a sandwich and they call
Yes.
it a Philly cheesesteak sandwich, and it's just a steak sandwich. It's not the same. It's not the same. And I had last summer, we went to the American Library Association, which was being held in Philly. And I finally got to go back to Philly. I got to take my wife to Philly for the first time. And we were so busy, I never even got to get her a cheesesteak. So I gotta go back. I gotta go back and remedy that situation.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Now, let me ask you a question before we move on. Is
Mhm.
the Philly cheesesteak, is that the same thing as like New York got the chopped cheese? Is that the same thing with a different
No,
name?
no, it's different. So with the Philly cheesesteak, like you have two options. You either do the cheese whiz or you do the provolone. And they've been fighting about which one is better my entire life. So I don't think it's ever going to get resolved. I don't think it's ever going to be a situation, but you can't get the Philly cheesesteak in New York. You just can't. You got to be in Philly. I know it said has something to do with the water that's used. That's a big part of it. But you can't get it. I have not tasted a cheesesteak anywhere else that
Yeah.
is the same thing.
So, I'm here in Louisiana, for an example, right? And
Okay.
whenever I lived in California and when I go to other places, you'll see a restaurant that says Louisiana gumbo or
Yeah.
Louisiana po' boy. And it's like, man, you go in the spot and look around, like, it don't seem like familiar at all. It's like, what is it?
Right. Right.
And it's
See,
always
that's how they
horrible.
do it. That's probably how they prey on the fact that people don't know, right? But they've heard. So you throw the label on there, and then people will think they have the experience without actually knowing the real thing. You know what I mean? I've had so many people try to recommend Philly cheesesteak sandwiches to me, and they're all, it's all good. They're doing it genuinely, but they've never been to Philly. They don't know. So, you can't fault folks for things they don't know. You know what I
Uh,
mean?
on this podcast, we love having food conversations here. So thanks for indulging my Philly cheesesteak opener for the conversation, right? Um, so your book, Blood Slaves, man. I am so just over the top crazy about this book. I want to ask you first, like, I'm a vampire guy all my whole life. So what brought you into the world
Yeah.
of like vampires and the mystical creatures and everything? What brought you into that world?
I've always loved vampires. I saw when I was a kid, The Lost Boys, and it was the first horror movie I ever saw, and I thought it was the coolest thing I ever saw. And from
Bruh,
then
that was
on,
an awesome movie. That was an
The
awesome
Lost
movie.
Boys, man, you can't
Lost
beat it.
Boys,
You can't
man.
beat it. Dude, I was in. I was in, and to this day, The Lost Boys is it for me. It's more than just the fact that it's vampires, which is great. It's a quintessential snapshot of 1987. Like you watch that movie and you have lived a part of your life in 1987. It's exactly what was going on at that time. So I love the movie. I love vampires. That was where the lore started for me. And I've just always wanted to see what I could do with that creature, like how I could do something with that creature that was different, that was vicious, that was violent. And all respect to Stephanie Meyer, I didn't want to do something that was sparkly and romanticy and all of that. But when this hit me, when it came to me, it came to me full. And I tell people all the time, I wrote the book, but I'm not sure I wrote the book because it felt like it was sent to me. You know what I mean? And fortunately, I was open enough to receive it. But yeah, vampires have always been vampires and dragons. Those are my two.
I'm with
Those
you.
are
I'm
my
with
creatures.
you. I'm with you. You said 1987. I'm dating myself here. I was 6 years old in 1987. Probably shouldn't have been watching that movie, thinking back on it, but it was a great movie. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna go and find it tonight, watch it again as a grown man.
Yes, man. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's now. Now I'll tell you this: there is a connection between the Lost Boys and Blood Slaves.
really.
So if you watch the movie, you'll see the Corys are in the car and they're driving away from the vampire lair, right? And they are almost about to drive off the edge. And Corey Haim slams on the brakes because he was told burn rubber. And so he slams on the brakes before they go over the hill. And then was it Feldman? I think Feldman said burn rubber. And Haim turns to Feldman and he says, burn rubber does not mean warp speed. And then they back out and they leave. Now, when Rafazi is training Quadzo, he tells Quadzo, immortality does not mean invincibility.
Yes,
And
yes,
that's that was inspired
yes,
by Lost
yes.
Boys.
Man, I love that. I love it. I love it. So, in doing my research for this show, I met you via Blood Slaves last year. I know everything about you from Blood Slaves, but doing my research, I realized you have a long history in film,
Yeah.
television, TV shows, on the screenwriting side. You were part of the Inkwell classic movie, Love the Red State, and that whole cast. Like, my question for the audience is, how did your acting and screenwriting background help you when it comes to writing a full out novel and character development and dialogue and sequences, plots, and everything like that? How did that help?
It helped because it allowed me to have a shortcut into creating characters. As an actor, that's the job, right? Like you get a script, you reading the whole thing, you're looking at your character, you're looking at how that character interacts with the other characters, and then your job is to bring it to life, like bring it up off the page and turn it into something that's like visual that people will be affected by. So going into the book, I knew I needed to do the same thing. And because I was so accustomed to screenwriting, screenplays are mostly dialogue. And so there's a lot of dialogue in Blood Slaves. And I think that's sort of what attributes the sort of cinematic quality to it. Because instead of just like prose and prose and prose and info dumping, you're finding out who these people are by what they're saying and how they're talking to each other and how they're interacting with each other. And I think that is probably the biggest influence working in film and television had on the writing process.
While we here talking about the business of books, I love discussing how the book industry to me has a parallel to like the music industry and things like that. So speak about, do you find any parallel at all from the book business to the movie Hollywood industry business? Are there any overlaps? Or are they totally different universe?
They're completely different universes. My experience, especially coming from film and television and then transferring into publishing, it's wildly different. The biggest difference, to me, in my experience, and I know other folks may have it different, but for me, the biggest thing is that they're paying attention. As a screenwriter, you know, nobody really likes reading scripts, even though that's like the job of, everything starts with the screenplay, but nobody really reads the screenplay. So it keeps kind of getting passed around to different people, and then they put together coverage and everybody reads a little bit of it. And then when they talk to you about it, they ask you these questions that they would have answers if the folks had actually read the screenplay, but they don't. So then you have to over explain. And then ultimately, when it's done, the job of a screenplay is to grow up and become a movie or grow up and become a television show. The job of a book is to be a book. That's it. We're done. That's the whole goal. And the audience for publishers, they read books. So publishers have to read the books. So when they talk to you, they've read the book. So they talk to you in a very intelligent manner because they know what you've written, and it's just a lot more respect, I found.
When you said nobody really sit around and read screenplays, I'm thinking back to my acting teacher from high school and being around him. He always had screenplays or whatever everywhere that's reading these scripts. And we always thought it was weird, like, man, who in the world? He was always reading scripts, you know what I'm saying? It's funny you said that.
Yeah, it's I mean, they're there, and some people read them, but the vast majority of folks, it's way more about, you can have the greatest screenplay that's ever been written, but if you don't have the right attachments to it, have the right stars or whatever, no one cares. You can have the biggest stars attached to the worst screenplay ever, and that thing's getting greenlit, and they're going to put it in theaters, and the audience is going to be sitting there going, huh? So, it's a much different industry. I mean, yeah, they'll buy books and turn them into shows and
Yeah,
movies.
that's right.
But I mean, in my experience, that's about it.
So let me ask you this. I studied like the film game a lot in private. I know now, but people attention span being shorter, like
Mhm.
actual TV shows and showrunners are talking about they're producing shows a certain way on purpose
Mhm.
to the attention span or lack thereof. So in the writing game, do you think that impacts the writing game as well when it comes to like you gotta be mindful of the average person right now and their attention? It's not what it was years ago when it comes to books.
I don't know. I mean, I think they're very, very different audiences. And when I say that, I mean, okay, as an example, you can call someone a sports fan, right? But that is a big umbrella. They could be, a NASCAR fan, but not a football fan. They could be a baseball fan, but not a golf fan. They could be a tennis fan, but you know what I mean? So it's a very specific thing. Readers are not loud. They're too busy reading, right? So like you see books all the time. Books are hitting the New York Times bestsellers list. They're selling tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of copies. People that read, they're a different audience. They're just a different breed. So I don't think that that audience is changing so much. I mean, but I think for the most part, readers are readers and viewers are viewers, and they're very, very different.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So let's talk about the creation of this story. You mentioned in your book
Mhm.
how the events of the pandemic in 2020, and more specifically around the George Floyd murder, was a large catalyst to you writing this story.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, you had a whole different story in mind prior to that point.
Yeah.
Tell us about the impact of the George Floyd situation on you, and then how it put that fuel in your pit.
Um, so I'm working on this other thing, trying to get it figured out. I see the news and I see the thing and I see Chevin murder George. Um, and I got mad. I got real mad. And as the situation progressed, I got more and more mad. And then people were all of a sudden, they're like out on the streets and they're protesting and stuff. And the protests were valid, but they made me mad because this whole thing happened because this guy decided to kill a black man in the street. And now we're all being put in jeopardy because of this COVID situation. So now people are out in the streets. They're begging us to stay inside, stop the spread. But now the spread is all away. It's everywhere because everybody's upset and protesting this thing. And I just felt like I don't I don't know if this is about I don't know if this is about George Floyd. Like, is this about this man? Because if it's about this man, where was this anger the last time a black man was killed by cops? Because it was happening. It was the thing. It was an ongoing process. It was
Yes, it
happening
was.
when Obama was
Yes,
still in
it
office,
was. Yes, it was.
right? And there was nowhere near the same amount of like vitriol that it was for George. And I was like, well, it's not about him. So what's it about? You know, people weren't happy with Trump. People were tired of being inside. And it just felt like all of this vitriol in George's name wasn't even for him, which made me sad, right? Then I don't know how much longer later, when the riots broke out, then you get the Kyle Rittenhouse kid who crosses state lines with an automatic weapon, kills like three people, and then cries on the court. And then they're like, "Oh, not guilty." And then this dude's writing a book, and I'm like, "So George has to die. This dude gets to kill people, and he gets to have a book. Like, it's not. None of this is right." And I was talking to my wife about it, and she knew I was working on the other vampire story. And she said to me, "It's too bad your vampires can't go back in time and fix everything from the start." And the next day, this thing was in my head.
So I know it's been a long time now for sure, but like, do you recall the original story at all? Like, what was that going
Oh,
to
yeah.
even be?
Oh, yeah.
What was the original story?
So I remember it very well. I can't talk too much about it because I'm actually going to take part of it and give it to Quadzo in future books. But it was essentially it was the story of a vampire who didn't know he was a vampire. That's all.
Okay,
That's all I
yeah,
can
yeah, yeah. This is a spoiler free show. We're not gonna spoil anything. So I want to ask you. This is a good question. It's Women History Month right now, recognizing the wonderful women in the world.
Mhm,
And in your book, you talk about your phenomenal team around you that are predominantly women. Speak
mhm.
about your team you have in your camp, man, and how much love they show to your project.
So every member of my team, with the exception of one guy, uh, all women, starting with my wife, who is stuck by me through failure after failure. The poor woman's been through a lot dealing with my dumb ass. But uh, I was looking for agents. I submitted the book to several American agents. all passed. But a woman in Canada read the book. She reacted to it. She decided to represent me, and she pushed it forward to several editors. And the one that responded was Letitia Gomez at Kensington. And she worked with an incredible team of women, and she maneuvered the book throughout them to get them all one by one. She was pulling them in with this story and this book. By the time I was speaking with them, they were all in. And white, black, Hispanic, all in and ready to spill blood. In fact, when the editorial letter came in, they wanted more blood. They wanted more blood than I had already written. And I was down. I was ready. And they stood up. They stood by it. They promoted it. They pushed it, especially for a debut author. I mean, I had never written anything before. And off the cuff, they gave me a 3-book deal because they knew it was a series. So the support has been incredible in publishing and with Kensington.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. They wanted more blood. That's crazy because the
Yeah.
book is pretty. The book is pretty graphic as it is. They wanted even more. That's crazy.
Yeah, they did. They wanted a lot more, especially in the end. They were like, "Yeah, we need more. More needs
Yeah.
to happen." I'm like, "Okay, I'll
I
do it."
know. I know. Sometimes in life, momentum is important, and so
Mm-hmm.
you wrote this book around the pandemic. We just established that, but like, whenever Sinners came out last year, Ryan Coogler, Michael B. Jordan, the whole like phenomenon of that. And the world became so hungry about black vampires and our traditions, our cultures, etc. Whenever Sinners came out, how did you feel? Did you feel like, yes, perfect, I'm on time? How did you feel?
I was terrified. I was so scared, man, because it was like, it's just my book, right? I just wrote this book, and like nobody knows me as an author or whatever. And then here comes Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan with this $90 million movie about black vampires. I was like, oh man, I'm sunk. That's it. I was like, I was excited for the movie, but I thought it was totally going to kill it. And then the greatest thing happened. It wasn't really a black vampire movie. It was about us. It was about our traditions. It was about mysticism. It was about hoodoo. It was about all that great, rich stuff. But it wasn't about vampires. Vampires came in and disrupted what we had going on, right? So that was the first great thing. And then the second great thing was people were walking out of that movie and they were hungry for more, and they started making lists. If you love Sinners, this is what you need to read. And my book kept showing up on that list. And I so grateful for
Oh
that.
my God. Yes. Let me tell you, as an avid reader, the last time I saw this kind of momentum was probably the first Black Panther movie. When that came out,
Mm-hmm.
the push after that for so much Afrofuturism and African dress, African garb, our culture once again, our everything. Like the amount of books and movies that came out after that
Yep.
for years was incredible, man. So I can imagine the vampire wave for the next couple of years. Maybe it's probably gonna be crazy.
Dude, and Ryan Coogler again. You know what I mean? But like, remember, we still have oh man, I'm forgetting her last name, Tigress, who wrote Immortal Dark. And so her
Yes, yes,
huge
yes,
trilogy, that's
yes.
been killing it here and overseas. And there's a lot of different black vampire books that are starting to come to the street. And I feel like Seacrest, she came before Sinners. So, she sort of started that wave cooking. What Ryan did kind of blew it up. And so now, the rest of us are just like, in our little canoes coming down the stream. Yeah, it's been great. It's been wonderful. I absolutely owe a debt to Sinners for sure.
Yeah, sure. So next, I want to ask you about like the research process, right? Even though it's a work of fiction, was there still a heavy research component when it comes to well the vampirism for one thing, but like two the slave aspect and what's going on with the slave narrative? Was there a heavy
Right.
research process for that?
Yes. Um, I mean, yes and no. So basically, the idea in my head was vampirism for freedom. So if you are going to become a vampire, which means you have to die and then come back a monster that has to kill to stay alive, things have to be really bad to make that decision, right? Like you can't be like, oh, well, he hurt my feelings, so I'm gonna go do this thing. No, it's gonna be really bad, and unfortunately, it was. It was horrendous. Um, so as I'm putting my scenes together, I'm researching, events that happened during the era of slavery, and as vicious and violent and brutal as the book is, um, it literally includes this much of what I researched. Like there are things that I saw and read that there was no way I could ever put in a book. Like this literally was a scratching of the surface of how insidious our ancestors were treated. Um, and it was still enough to justify the change, the switch. Like, how do we get out of this? Because it's not just for life, it's for generations. You Willie and Gertie's child, that's a slave. That's just a slave in the making. You know what I mean? It's inherited. So I wanted to make sure that story wise, the stakes were high because that's just a thing in story, right? You don't do something with low stakes and then have this a whole other thing happen. Like you have to have high stakes. Secondly, because we were talking about history, it was important to me that I do it accurately. We even when I was writing the book, people were talking about, oh, well, slavery wasn't really that bad, and they got skills and they got to use those skills later, and it was really Black immigration. Like the downplaying of what had happened was disgusting to me, and so I felt a duty to say this is how it was. This is what it was. I'm going to entertain you, but this is what happened. This is what it was. And some folks got a little upset about that. But I mean, it's something, everybody's got their own thing, and I get that. And mental health is a real thing, and I don't want anybody reading this book if it's going to trigger them in that manner. It's not an easy book to get through, but unfortunately, that's what it was.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
cool about the remainder of the series is that I get to change what was.
yeah, yeah.
So
So I love to ask the question to follow up on the research side. You have a series coming up, so it's kind of different for you. But like, what's something that you found out in the research that you didn't put in the book, like something that you couldn't put in the book?
tons of stuff like the cannibalism, um, how our teeth were used to make false teeth for slave owners, how they had a game that was similar to golf, I guess, where they would bury infants and swing clubs at their heads. Uh, the the breeding where they would force people to have children and then take those children from them and then sell them off. The fact that there was no such thing as a family for any of the enslaved. I mean, all of it is just horrendous and awful. And the rape that was just daily, just assaulted. And it was so much, man. It was so much. And I could never put the bulk of the stuff that I read into a book.
Well, let me ask you about your mental health, right? When it comes to this, because I've been a long time person reading this history, things of that nature. I guess I've gotten a resistance to it, I guess. But the average person said, "Man, I can't read this certain kind of book because it's just way too much." Like, how do you deal with maintaining your balance while you're doing this process? What did you do to kind of maintain yourself?
This is where the Singaporean television came in.
The Singaporean television. Okay.
Yeah, dude. I had discovered Singaporean television a while back. I fell in love with it. I loved the stories. There was a lot of like history, a lot of culture that I just found fascinating because I knew nothing about it. And it served for an escape for me. And once I started watching those shows, I started just kind of going down the rabbit hole of Asian entertainment because I wanted to see the difference, right? Because there's Singaporean, then you have Japanese, obviously, Korean, Chinese. I wanted to see what the differences were, and doing that cleared my head, it cleared my mind. And then I got into K-pop because it was like, okay, we get to go back to the 90s of of R&B, but we're doing it overseas. Okay, that's cool. Let's hear the new language. Let's hear what's going on. And all of that stuff lightened my load, and allowed me to continue on. But those Singaporean shows, man, they transported me, and they allowed me to breathe. And I am forever grateful to those writers and those actors. It's just amazing talent in Singapore.
So while you were indulging with the Singaporean television, is there any aspect of that form of storytelling that kind of carried over to your writing, or was it totally like just a reprieve?
Totally a reprieve.
Gotcha, gotcha,
Complete escape. I mean, the
gotcha.
Singaporean shows, they're very sort of sweeping. They're very emotional, yes, but they're very romantic, and it's like, there's a lot of family stuff that goes on, which is cool. But it was just freeness. It was like I have to live on this plantation all day. So tonight I want to go to Singapore and I just want to hang out.
That's funny. That's funny. So I'm a military vet, right?
uh,
So I've been to Singapore once, like 20 plus years ago. But when
wow.
I was in Singapore, I did not watch TV. And I was doing so many things. I was not watching
Right.
TV in Singapore.
As you should have been. I haven't been to Singapore. I have to watch the TV show.
You know
Until
what?
I get there.
So I've been blessed to go to like 25 countries, right? And people always ask, like, what's the favorite place you've been to out of
Yeah,
25? And
right.
Singapore is always in like my top three, top five of where I've been. Singapore is always like high up there, man. Yeah, I really, really loved it out there.
All right, I gotta go then. I
You
love
do,
that.
you
I love
do,
hearing
you
that.
do, you do, you do. Man, think about this, right? So you said the event of George Floyd happened. You were
Yeah,
enraged and everything. Spoke to your wife. The story came, and you wrote the book in about 40 plus days, give or take.
yeah. 44
So
days.
tell us about that. Tell us about that tour de force you had writing the book in 40 plus days. Like you said, it was like no real outline, no real like character storyboard and stuff like that. How'd you do it?
I didn't do any of that. I didn't do storyboards. I didn't do cards. I didn't do outlines. I didn't do anything. I just sat down and started writing. Uh, I just started writing. I had to get it out. I had to get it out. It was in my head, and I had to get it out. And so I would sit and I would write, and I would hear it and see it, and I would hear it and see it until I got tired, which was usually around 6:30 in the evening, and I would stop, and I would be kind of exhausted. And my wife would be like, "Well, what are you going to write? Like, what happens next?" And I would tell her, I don't know. Like, I knew the overview, I knew the pitch, right? I knew it was going to be vampires, and they were going to take over, and they were going to end slavery. Like, I knew that whole thing, but piece by piece, chapter by chapter, I didn't know. So I go to sleep, I wake up, second piece drops in my head. And so I would do that, and I write. That process kept going for 44 days. And once 44 days were over, I had the first draft of this book. Never had that
So,
experience before, ever.
wow. So your second book is coming out in August, I believe. You probably already wrote the book, right? So in your second book, was the writing
Yes.
process kind of sort of similar, or did you finally, do a formal outline and everything for the next one?
No. I, I mean, I
Yeah, like
should,
that.
so here's what happened. I wrote the first book. Halfway through the first book, I start thinking about what does this mean, right? Like, what would happen? Because the book ends, but it's not over, right? It's like, okay, well, we have this one plantation. What are we going to do now? So I was on a roll by the time I got to the end of the first book. So I just started writing the second book in the same manner. I didn't have an agent. I didn't have a publisher. I didn't have any of that. I just started writing the thing. Then when I got my agent and I told her what I was doing, she was like, well, maybe stop. Let's see what happens to see if we sell. Because, your editors and publishers, they're going to have, their say in what happens. So I backed off of it. And then what they did was they asked me to create a summary of what the second book would be. So I had already written most of the book. So I just wrote a summary of what I had already written. And they were like, cool, we like where it's going. And then they brought the deal. So by the time it was time to write the second book, they already kind of knew what I was wanting to do. And so I just finished off what I was doing. So,
So as a journalist, I
uh,
have to ask, for book number
mm,
3, you anticipate
yeah.
just keeping it going, doing the same thing, or are you going to say, you know what? Okay, give me an outline, but give me a storyboard. Like, you are funny, dude.
So I turned book 3 in back in January.
Oh, yeah, it's already
Uh,
okay. It's done. Okay,
yeah, I turned it in already.
okay.
Um, Nah, I still didn't do any of that. I didn't do any. What happens now is, because the publisher is there, right, and they're involved, uh, they want to know what's coming, right? So they ask me, they say, well, give us a summary of what the book is going to be. Like, what is it going to be? And we had a couple of different ways it could go. So we kind of went to the publisher and was like, hey, we can do it this way or this way or this way. Like, what would you prefer? And then when they told us what they preferred, then that's when I was like, okay, so here's how that would play out. And then once they were like, we're good with that, then I just go to work and start writing it. And I just write it off of the summary. But I've never been big on like the outlining and the cards and the things and the stuff. I don't begrudge it. I think they're very, very valuable tools. And I don't suggest anybody write the way I do, because everything I do is wrong. Like, don't do don't do what I do. But for me, like, all of that stuff, when it's so much, I'm tired of the story. I don't want to write the story now because I spent all this
Yeah, all
time.
the time doing
Yeah,
yeah,
and that's not writing. To me, the joy is in the writing. I would rather write something, and then, that, to me, that's what editing's for. It's like get deep in editing and like
yeah,
perfect it. But I'd rather just kind of write it and
get,
get
get
it
it out.
cooking. Hmm.
Okay. I got you. I got you. Man,
Yeah.
this is my most important part of this book to me. Tell us about your audio narrator. I gotta say it. For the past year, with I love audiobooks. Audiobooks come up, I tell folks get blood slaves. I
Yeah.
don't care what genre book you like. That audio narrator is so good.
Yes.
I could not stop playing it, bro. I was trying to
He's
turn it off to go and do something, and I felt the need to put it back on again. Like he is so good at what he does.
yeah.
About the
Yeah.
audio narrator, and will he narrate the next two books as well?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I know that they are discussing um, the possibility of future audiobooks. It's too early to tell. Personally, I hope he does. Akin Amatoso killed it, just killed it. And they sent me tapes of about 5 narrators. Um, and I heard his voice and I was like, that we're done. That's it. And they're like, you don't want to hear? I was like, no, I don't want to hear the other him. He is a South African filmmaker. He's a writer, actor. I just everything in his voice to me brought the thing alive. Like it's like listening to a movie, hearing him read this book.
It
What he
was.
did, incredible.
It
It's incredible.
was. But like anybody I know that said don't like audiobooks, I'm like, wait, give
Yep.
this book a try. Give it a try before you say that. Give it a try because this guy,
I mean,
he is up.
and the thing is, and I don't know if people even like notice this or recognize it because he's so good. That audio track for the book, it doesn't have music. It doesn't have sound effects. It doesn't have anything. It is literally just Akin's voice. It's just his voice telling you this story. It's incredible. What he does is incredible.
I had an audience member ask me before the show, is the same narrator, I mean, I'm sorry, that's not wrong question. Is the audio book for book two going to be released the same day as the book release?
Again, I'm not sure. I don't
Okay.
know. They haven't. We're not at that point yet.
Okay.
I hope so. I would hope so. I hope that they decide to make the audiobook a real thing. But when I find out, everybody will find out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you about this. The Ramanga, the name of the Ramanga. Tell us about your choice in the world of vampirism. Your choice,
Mhm.
the Ramanga, and like where that came from, and how you created that.
So the name Ramanga comes from the, oh man, I'm gonna mispronounce this. The Bestopio people in Madagascar. And I'm sure I said Bestopio wrong, but I did a lot of research in terms of vampires across different areas, lands, civilizations, societies, and wanted to see how this creature was translated. So I went through African countries, and many of them have vampiric creatures that are part of their culture and their history. And the Madagascar believe in a creature called the Ramanga, and the Ramanga is a vampire creature that eats. I just thought Ramanga was the coolest name I had ever heard.
It
And
really is.
so
It really is.
it's so cool, right? It's so cool. And so I was like, okay, this gives me a link to Africa, but I'm going to steal it and I'm going to make it my own. And once I saw that, once I saw Ramanga, I made a Ramungans, and then I just started building my lore off of that.
Yeah, we mentioned sinners a little while ago. I know for even like for some people that's black that like vampires, they might think about like Blade, Wesley Snipes back in the day, as far as like black people in the vampire world, or Eddie Murphy, vampire in Brooklyn, stuff like that. But I'm glad you said about the African traditions that we've already had when it comes to vampire kind of stories and stuff like that.
Yep. They already had them, and they were monsters. And part of the thing in the Ramanga lore in the book, where they tell these stories, but they're not real. These stories are told for children. There were societies in African cultures that I read that did. They told stories of these vampire creatures to keep the children in line. So that was like a thing that I wanted to do. But I did want it to do. I wanted to for sure have it be linked to Africa, and I wanted it to be a new origin story. I didn't want it because I felt like if the vampire really is of European uh, origin, then even in the crust of this story, it's still a savior. It's still like a white savior. You know what I mean? So to take that and make that a part of African culture, West African culture. This creature is not from Europe, it's from West Africa and has its own history, villainous and violent as it is, but it's not European. So that means this power comes from the motherland, it comes from the homeland. So all of it is ours. And that was important to me too. So I was just like, we're just rewriting it. And also, European vampires, like, they're like old dudes in like long coats and they're super rich and they're very bored. And then they see a young girl and now they have something to live for. And I wanted real, vicious, violent creatures.
Well, guess what? Job well done. You did it. You did it, my friend. You did. Touch it down. Touch it down. You got that one. You got that one. I always say every book and even movies is only as good as the bad guy, right? The villain is important. Tell us about the character Monroe. I don't want to spoil the book, but Monroe is a very horrible dude, man. So tell me about
Yeah,
the creation of the Monroe character and what you were thinking about putting that together.
honestly, Monroe began with Derek Chavant. If you notice in that second chapter, when Willie is running with Charlie and Monroe catches him, one of the first things Monroe does is he puts his knee
Yeah,
in Willie's neck,
yeah, I remember that. I saw it.
right?
I saw it. I was
So,
wait a minute.
yeah,
I saw
yeah,
that.
right. So, my thought process going into that was like, well, what if George was a vampire? What would he have done? How would it have worked out? So, in a small way, this is sort of a little bit of me getting revenge for George. But yeah, he started there, and then just the research of overseers, who they were, what they did, the fact that they were ostracized as well by the rich white community. The
Yeah,
fact that
yeah,
they
yeah,
were not educated themselves. They had broken speech patterns. A lot of them tried to start a farm of their own and failed and got bought out. So, like all of those things, all of those sort of failures that I read about that overseers, I just dumped all of them into Monroe. and just made them this thing that drove his hatred.
Man,
And so that the blood thing, the love and hate in the blood, like that drove all of that because Monroe's just filled with it.
um, think about the character Rafazi, right? Very, very important character in the story. The Rafazi character. Speak about the creation of him, man. Very interesting guy.
So Rafazi, I knew that the main character was Willie, right? And I knew that there had to be a vampire somewhere to turn Willie. And so I didn't want that vampire to be like the catch-all. So I always knew Rafazi was going to be supportive. But in building the lore of the Ramanga, that tribe and what they had done and where they came from and how long they had been around, the idea of a guy who kind of had nothing to live for, was turned into a Ramanga, never really took responsibility for anything, just kind of ran around for hundreds of years doing whatever he wanted to do, and then is suddenly given the opportunity to actually do something good. It's like a redemption story, you know what I mean? Because he's a self-proclaimed coward. He doesn't want to lead. He never wanted to turn anybody. He never wanted to have any of that responsibility. But the weird thing about it is that all of that cowardice saved him from the plague and allowed him to do what he did, which is give Willie the blood. And so now this whole new Ramanga tribe is spawned from his cowardice. And that eats him up a little bit. Because he's, he says what he is. He says what he is. So I tell readers, people will ask me, well, what's the second book? And I'm like, the second book is what happens next. And, just remember what Rafazi said. He is who he is. He didn't lie. So.
Now, let's speak on that, right? So there's a plague in the book. And you
Yeah.
wrote the book around the pandemic. So I want to guess the pandemic was a big catalyst for having that plague element in the book.
It helped a lot because it gave me a reason to get rid of all of the Ramanga tribe. For me, it was important that this entity was fictional to the minds of the enslaved. It wasn't a real thing. It was just out there. So when Willie encounters Rafazi, it's like, this is weird, but it's been hot all day and Monroe has like jacked up my back and none of this is real. But then it becomes real. And that to me was important. But if they weren't gone for hundreds of years already, then that becomes a more difficult thing. So yeah, COVID's like wiping folks out. And I just sort of took that and created my own plague from it.
Let me ask you about this difficult conversation, man. We got to have it though, right? In our own community, at a certain point, when the chance to have the liberation appears, every person not with it. Every person not down for the plan. Every person not this gun ho to go and do it.
Right.
That's the real thing. Even today and right now, if we see what's going on in politics and everything, everybody not with the situation, man. So talk about the dynamics of that psychology element.
So, you know, how it is, right? You live in a society that has a dominant culture, right? And the dominant culture's approval can be very seductive, right? I remember me growing up, I had white folks say to me, oh, well, you're not like the rest of them. You're smart. You're this, you're that. Whatever compliment follows, you're not like the rest of them. You know what I mean? And if you're not mindful of that, if you're not listening to that, mess with your head a little bit. Just mess, just enough. and you start feeling like maybe you're a little better, like maybe the others don't get it, you know. And I think that that's a real issue. So when it came time to create that dynamic, the problem between Willie and Gertie, you know, she's like, she's not with it. But it was also important to me that everything that she was doing still made sense for her. This is a woman who is pregnant. This is a woman who is trying to keep her head down. She's trying to stay out of trouble. She's trying to figure out a way to have this baby and somehow not have it be enslaved. She doesn't have any answers, but what she knows of this myth, of this legend of Ramanga, is absolutely not the way to go. It is not the way to go. They thought for years it was a myth. Now all of a sudden it's real. What if it's not what we thought it was? What if you're just dead? What if this dude's just like taking blood from people? She doesn't know what to believe. And even when Willie turns, it's against her will, and she's just stuck. She's just really stuck. And I think a lot of us end up in that predicament, you know. And it's unfortunate, but it does happen.
Um, we know in a lot of these tales is a character kind of like Samuel L. Jackson with the Django story, and he's playing Steven. There's a character here that remind me of that particular character. How about the
Yeah,
mindset of that kind of person? Like you said, like you think you're better than everybody else. You think you're above other people of your
right,
same class. You know what I'm saying?
right. Well, it was important. Clarence was important because Irene is so important to the story. And I wanted to show that even though we had the Clarences and they existed, they still worked alongside people who understood and recognized what was going on. And that's what Irene symbolizes. Like, it doesn't matter. She's mixed race. She's not black enough for the folks on the field. She's not white enough for the white folks. She's stuck too, and she's getting abused on a daily basis, and she can't escape her. She's in the house. If anything goes wrong, she's the first one that gets it. And I wanted to show the difference between what we normally see in like slave narratives when it comes to like the house slaves. The house slaves are, oh, it's wonderful, it's great, everything great. And yeah, you had that, but you had more than like one or two people working in a house. And I wanted to show the dynamic of what happened in those houses with those house slaves, what they had to deal with, and how it was different from what the field slaves went through. It was more complex. So Clarence was a necessary foil for Irene, so that readers could really see, okay, we've got different dynamics all over the place. We got dynamics on the field, we got dynamics in the house. Like, it wasn't just this cut and dry situation. Like, there was just stuff going on all over that had to be navigated.
I cannot wait till your book two come out, man. Because I don't know if you heard about the book Sky Full of Elephants or not, but like
Yeah.
books like
Oh, I
Sky Full
love.
of Elephants, other books like that, where it's like, okay, all the other people are not here anymore. How do we
Mhm.
govern ourselves, and what do we do with this new freedom and liberation? What is that going to look like?
Yeah.
Interesting dynamic, man.
Yeah. I loved Sky Full of Elements. I thought that was a brilliant book. And I told my publisher, I said, if Blood Slaves is a mediation on freedom, then Blood Rising is a mediation on power, because it's exactly what you're saying. It's like, okay, we've done that. We've eradicated the issue. We have power now. We have autonomy now. What do we do with it?
Yeah,
Especially Quadzo. This guy has been a slave longer than he's just been a human, right? And so now he's in this position of power. And he doesn't know what to do. He barely knows how to be a vampire. You know, that just happened. Like, you know, what is he gonna do? How he's got this task in his head to free all the slaves, but how? How am I gonna do that? You know what I mean? So it was very fun. It was a very interesting dive in to like sort of investigate that part of him. Like, how does he become what he becomes? Because really, the only example he has of power is the white folks and how Big Jim treated all of them. That's the only example of power he has. So how do you navigate that? That's sort of the real crux of Blood Rising.
Well, thank you very, very much this evening, giving us all this background and in history and process. Anybody watching the show, please go out there and get Blood Slaves. If you can get the audio book, I'm still gonna, it's hands down one of the best things I've heard ever when it comes to audio. And whenever book two come out, man, come back to the show. I love having a repeated guest,
Yes,
man. Come on back and come talk about it again, man.
absolutely, man. Absolutely. And then, like, your folks, just so your folks know, like, if you haven't, you know, gotten the book yet, the paperback is coming out this summer. The
Okay,
paperback is
okay.
coming out for it's come, I think, like a month before the second book. But the thing about the paperback is, first of all, you got the stenciled edges and it's all pretty and whatnot. But the paperback has 40 pages of never before seen material.
Are you serious, bro? 40
Yes,
pages? Like, see,
yes,
I
yes.
got the Kindle version already. I got the audio
Right.
version. Now I gotta get the paperback. That's crazy.
The paperback. The paperback, you're going to get deleted scenes. You're going to get some excerpts from the second book. But the real capper is you're going to get a prequel scene.
I am sold. Reel me in. Reel me in. We got a live one. We got a live one. Thank you very, very much for coming to the show, man. Hope y'all all enjoy y'all evening. I'm gonna go ahead and sign off right quick. And see y'all next week on the Sean P Experience, man. Salute.